All right, well, let's just get started here. This is me. Not exactly a Zoom jockey extraordinaire, but Dr. Amy Morgenstern, CEO and founder of Blue Stars Admissions Consulting. And I do want to also call attention to the fact that our free college planning workbook is up and running again, which you can find on our website. Here's our wonderful team, and we are busy working on free write questionnaires now. We are finalizing school lists. We're working on art portfolios, so it's getting intense. And we're debating about the common application COVID question right now and what we think the best approach is. So in lots of discussion about that too. Okay, this is our schedule for today. I'll do some rapid response for you. Then Helen, Ingerson, and I will get into UC Personal Insight question number 6. Again, the straightforward question. I've changed the schedule a little bit, so do note that I will be off for the next 2 Saturdays. I'm taking a little mini break to work on my own writing and just decompress, recharge, get ready for the admission season. So if you'll note that the next webinar will be on July 18th. The one after that on question 8 will be on the 25th. On August 6th, the team will be together talking about the common application prompts. I'm excited for that. And let's see, we also will be having that session devoted on becoming a doctor. I'm still waiting for my panelists, but that will probably happen in September. So, all right, let's do it. Let's take that week. I'm going to take that glitch and put that behind me to move on. And let's just take that week, set it behind us, the stuff that worked out. Let's keep it with us. Let's go forward. Here are our topics. So this is very, very interesting. Princeton cancels early action this year. So it's the first school to announce it. So as far as I know, perhaps I'll get pinged during the session. As far as I know, it's the only. Will this, signal a domino reaction? Will other schools be doing this? I have absolutely no idea. I don't know yet, but it's an interesting move, and let's see if other schools will be following suit or not. And yeah, feel free to ask questions later on in the Q&A. So at this point, we know that all of our IVs are test optional. I believe that Emory has also entered into the pool. That came down in my feed late last night. So wanted you to be aware of that. Again, test optional is not test blind. So you want to submit the scores if they will help you. If they won't help you, there's other things that possibly you can do to compensate for that. That's the basic idea behind test optional. And as I've stated before, we definitely do think that our students should be taking standardized exams, should be preparing for them. If it doesn't work out the way, whether maybe they couldn't take the exam or maybe the conditions weren't ideal, they didn't do as well, that's okay. We can figure it out at that point. Note that the ACT has nonetheless added 3 new test dates, so here they are. And summer activities are hopefully underway. You're creating your school list and brainstorming and free writing on your essays, and you're juggling. You're juggling. That's just the life of the rising senior. Okay, I did mention this last time and I didn't make it into a news item, and I don't know why. Maybe just there were other things that were captivating my attention at the time. But the UC Regents did vote unanimously to reinstate affirmative action. They endorsed what's known as ACA 5, which would repeal Proposition 2009, Proposition 209. So basically this is going to the voters as a proposition in November. and it will be up to the voters ultimately. And just a quick quote from, I think this is from the LA Times, it's considered a new drive to take bold action to increase equity and access to the nation's top public research university system. So I can imagine people have a lot of questions about this, and it's really, it's just beginning, it's just happening, and we will have to see if the proposition passes at all. But this could signal most definitely an interesting shift. There's lots of interesting numbers that they're working with and thinking through. It's not a quota system, however. That's one thing that UC wants to make very clear. This is not a quota system. What they want is for the considerations of race, ethnicity, and gender to be considered as, some of the factors that go into the decision making. So that plus the, UC's decision to basically do away with standardized exams in the next 3 years, possibly create their own. We don't know, have not heard any more on that. There'll be some interesting shifts in the UC admission landscape for our younger students. So I hope that personal growth summers are underway. I hope they're fun. We are just seeing lots of smiles on students' faces as they talk about what they're doing. And so they're growing, they're enjoying things, and that's really what you want for your summers. If you're lacking in ideas, do look at session 5 in the COVID-19 playlist. That will give you more ideas. Stay COVID conscious, stay society conscious, stay democracy conscious. And if you haven't yet, maybe map out your summer activities on a timeline. Time for wisdom. I learned to produce whether I wanted to or not. It would be easy to say, oh, I have writer's block. Oh, I have to wait for my muse. I don't. Chain that muse to your desk and get the job done. So, from Barbara Kingsolver, wonderful, legendary writer, both fiction and nonfiction, right? Chain that muse to your desk. So, the mythologies, I really want to try and use this webinar to get away from the mythologies of the writing process and the writing existence. And this idea that good writers are just la la la, oh, I'm inspired, I shall skip over to my desk and gold will come out. No. It's not that. Writing, it's a task. Just like you have to show up for your robotics team, just like you have to show up to your computer and code, coders code, writers write, chain that muse to your desk. So that's one. I got one more for you. Mark Twain. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking your complex, overwhelming tasks into small, manageable tasks, and then starting on the first one. So if you're familiar with the, now I'm blanking on the book, but the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. The author talks about the big rocks and the little rocks. So taking your tasks and dividing them up into big tasks and little tasks. And then he suggests you tackle the big tasks first. It depends on the situation. It depends on your day, it depends on your energy. But sort of this idea of breaking things down and then tackling one thing at a time is really key. So I just wanted to introduce that. And hey, Mark Twain said it. So, much higher authority than I am. This is the kind of stuff we do with our students, whether we're working on essays, whether we're working on school selection, whether we're working with our younger students on who are you and what do you like and how do we figure that out, or career exploration. It's sort of distilling things down into little tasks. That said, I want to say that this is not something that comes naturally to teens at their developmental stage. They need help. So I do want to say, when, I do speak to a lot of parents who tend to, express frustration that their child isn't learning their time management quickly enough, or their child isn't listening to what they say. Even our explaining this to a teen will only go so far. The teen has to then try it and fail usually and get frustrated and try it again. And after a few times, it works, right? That's how humans develop. So just want to make a few notes on this. But to teens, if you're right now freaking out, I do meet up with teens. They're like, I don't know. Okay, well, what's the first step to finding out, right? So just trying to slow yourself down and then say, okay, if I were to do this in like a step-by-step process, what would be the first step? Even that if that first step feels like it's a long way off from the goal. Once you take the first step, you find yourself on a track, and then you're moving and you're chaining your muse to your desk in the meantime. So that's my blended wisdom for you today. I think that's all the wisdom we have. I think it's time. I think it's time to bring Helen in. And for that, I have to find the Zoom and the panelists. So give me a minute here. I think I'm doing a great job so far. Here, I found Helen. I'm promoting her to a panelist. So it might take her a minute to get on the screen and for you to hear her. So I just want to say that. Oh, I'm supposed to allow you to talk. I think that will work. Hi, Helen. Are you there?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Hopefully you can hear me, right?
We can hear you really well. I can hear you well, at least.
Okay.
How are you doing today?
All right. How are you?
Good, good. I'm doing really well now that I've gotten past my glitch. But good, thank you. I'm doing really well. So, are you ready to talk about UC Personal Insight question number 6?
I am. Can't wait. I like this one.
I know. It's different. It's different. So cool. All right, let's get started. But of course, before we do that, because we are so systematic and we like to convey the importance of being systematic, let's just talk about the general tips for writing the personal insight questions. Quick review: be specific, stay focused on one aspect or one story, include a takeaway or lesson learned, don't get fancy, expect to draft multiple revisions so you can work through initial bad ideas, avoid repeating topic stories, spread your content throughout the 4 essays. We'll be talking a bit about that today in our examples and a little bit in our discussion and our analysis. Revise for tone, revise for tone. All right, here we are. Think about an academic subject that inspires you. Describe how you have furthered this interest inside and or outside the classroom. Okay, just let that soak in for a second. So the thing about this prompt is that it is really quite different from all the other prompts, right? And so how is this prompt different from all the other prompts? Well, all the other prompts give you a lot of leeway for creative interpretation. This prompt does not do that, right? There is no ambiguity. There's really no leeway. We've got a focus, and the focus is academic subject that inspires.
Now, there's another thing that makes this different from the other UC prompts. The list of hints and tips that Dr. M just ran through included one that said focus on one thing. You have to break that rule for the UC6 because the UC6 is asking you about everything you've done. to pursue an academic subject, inside or outside the classroom. That is everything. So you're not just focusing on one thing on this answer.
Now, I suppose that the one thing is the academic subject that you choose. That's the one thing, right? But then the idea is to take that one thing and like everything you can think of connected to that subject. So for example, if you are interested in studying biology, then presumably you'd be talking about the coursework that you did, maybe certain projects or assignments that were really important or inspiring to you. But you'd also be talking about your club work. Maybe you were doing like the Bio Olympiad, for example. Perhaps you had attended summer programs that were connected to biology. Maybe you had an internship. Maybe you volunteered at the ASPCA. Maybe you, job shadowed doctors. Basically, it's a grab bag. You want to take everything you've got, like it's like a panorama or like a panoply. And we'll give you some examples of this in a minute.
Or for another example, let's say maybe you're interested in international relations. You could explain what parts of your world history class especially interested you. You could talk about your Model UN experience and add in the volunteering that you did with a micro-lending project in India. So instead of talking about one event or one story, now you're putting in everything you've ever done related to that subject.
So how would you prepare for this kind of essay? Basically, you just take all of that stuff and gather it. I don't want to say dump it, but really you just like make a big list. Put it all into that document, like a bulleted list. Write some notes next to each item. So you don't want to just have a bulleted list. You want to have a bulleted list of notes. Just do that kind of gathering. That's your first step. Once you've just racked your brains and you've got everything, and not everything will make it in if you have a ton, and there's a word count, of course, but once you have everything in there, then go look at your content and see how you can organize it. And we just want to suggest there are two obvious ways to organize your content. You could do it either chronologically, or you could do it thematically. So gather your stuff, your raw material. Think about, am I going to organize this chronologically or thematically, and then stitch it together.
So the UC6 is sort of an assembly process, right? You just have to decide what structure you want to use. Another difference with the UC6 is if you are applying to one of the undergraduate professional schools at Berkeley. Berkeley is the big dog in the UC process of application. So although students get to choose any 4 of 8 prompts to write about in their application, if you're applying to one of the undergraduate professional schools at Berkeley, that would be either the Haas Business School, the Engineering School, or the College of Chemistry. Those schools have their own specific requirements. You have to talk about your intended field of study if you're applying to any of those schools. You have to talk about your specific major that you're applying to at those schools. You have to talk about, and this will sound an awful lot like the UC6 wording, any school or work-related experience. That is a requirement of just those Berkeley undergraduate colleges. It doesn't apply to any of the other UCs, but it does for those.
Right. So we often, when our students are applying to these colleges at Berkeley, we have them work on number 6 because it's just a great way for them to anchor their application and anchor their profile. And then they can, like, maybe they mention something in a sentence in number 6, and then they can take that experience and really blow it up in another essay and sort of complement that essay as well. So personal insight question number 6, if you are interested in engineering, chemistry, or business, at Berkeley, you want to focus in on this essay, and then you want to complement it with the other essays. It's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for students interested in these schools at Berkeley. Now, that said, however, you do want to remember that the 4 essays that you write in your application go to all the UC schools. So for example, there isn't a business major at every UC campus, right? So, but you've targeted Haas, and you're going to write UC number 6 on your academic interest to really make your case for Haas, and you can do other things to enhance your profile. But you want a shot at UC San Diego, you want a shot at Irvine, well, Irvine might have one, a business actually, that might be the wrong one to have chosen. But anyway, not all of them do. So then how do you negotiate that? Okay, so you'll be able to compensate for that in other essays. Again, there are 4, you have a total of 4 essays that you can write. So you will have to work that out in your application.
So one of the things that admissions committees want to see is a demonstrated interest in your major, your field of major interest, right? They want to see that you've pursued that in some way. So it is possible that you use the UC6 to talk about your demonstrated interest in one major, but if you know that you're going to apply to a different major at other UCs, you can use a completely different UC prompt to demonstrate your interest in that major. And that way, no matter what campus you apply to, the department for that major is going to see that you are interested in that major. So you could use, for example, the UC4 in addition to the UC6. The UC6 could explain everything you've done to pursue one major, and then the UC4, which is the significant educational opportunity essay, you could write about a particular summer program that demonstrate your interest in a completely different major. And that way, no matter which major you're applying to at which UC campus, each campus will see that you're interested in the major that you're applying to there. Okay, we're going to give you an example of somebody who did that really effectively in a second.
And I think when we talk about this more meta strategy with the essays and spreading yourself across the essays, we're also trying to address a different kind of approach to your application. So students and their parents usually say, how do I get everything of me and everything I'm proud of into the application without thinking about strategy, right? And then you might come up, oh, I want to apply for business, but now I want to look at other campuses, and now what am I going to do? Because I put out all the things, my dance and my piano and my bio Olympiad, and now I don't know what to do. But what we're trying, and when we sort of add this extra layer of discussion about essays, we're trying to introduce a strategic way of thinking about your application. So it's not about like you are radiating it out onto your application and they should take you because you're awesome. We all think that when we put out, I do too, It's rather like, oh, what's the landscape? What's the system? And how do I strategically position myself so that I can get the best and the most opportunities out of the system the way the system is. So I hope that these considerations are helpful to you. So just wanted to highlight that, that extra consideration. So the cool thing about personal insight question number 6 is that you can use it to really anchor your application, give your profile focus, like I'm the bio person, I'm the history person, I'm the physics person. You can do it that way, but you can also use it to broaden your profile. So for example, let's say all of your other essays and your activities basically speak to you as a future software programmer. But you are also a film buff. You really love film, you're really into it, you're into film criticism, you've dabbled in it yourself, you're targeting computer science as your major, but you're really interested in film. Well, it's possible that you've dealt with computer science in all the other essays, you can use this essay to talk about your love of film and everything that you've done inside and outside of the classroom on film. And that could possibly make you into a much more interesting computer science major as well. So that's another way that you can work the application and work this essay.
That's the kind of thing that would really help differentiate your application within the applicant pool of the future computer science majors and might help you stand out. They might not have one of you. They might have a whole lot of other people that have the other qualifications that you have, but they don't have one of you, the person that's interested in film, right? And then I think the other thing we want to point out is the wording in the prompt that says describe how you have furthered this interest. If you get too stuck on the how, you might not necessarily address the hidden subtext, which is the why. That wording isn't really in here, but the UCs don't necessarily just want a bullet point list of what you've done turned into an essay. They want to know why you're interested in this subject. So really pay attention to the that inspired you part of the prompt. Like, what about that subject interests you? Why are you passionate about it? What got you interested in studying it originally? The reason the subject impacted you, what it's meant to you. So don't just stick with the how.
Right, there is still a why in this essay captured in that, oops, I want to go back there, captured in, oh, how did I do this? Captured in that word, inspires, exactly. There's that, the why, the hidden why in this essay. So even though this essay is a bit of a nuts and bolts essay, it still has to come from the heart. It still has to come from the heart. Why do you love biology? Why do you love physics? You know, and we've worked with some students who have written some gorgeous essays about physics. So even something that you feel like, oh, what kind of human, framework can I give it? Oh yeah, you totally can. All right. I think we're ready for some question-specific tips at this point. We've really I think we've covered the question. So let's get there. This is what we've got for personal insight question 6, the academic interest that inspires. So write about everything connected to your chosen academic subject. Don't forget to include why you like this subject, what inspires you. You can use this question to provide focus on your intended major. You can also use this question to broaden your profile. So when you're brainstorming, include everything, even if it seems insignificant to you at first. You can always cut it out later. Once you've got all your raw material, take a minute and think about whether you'd like to organize your content chronologically or thematically. So in terms of time or in terms of themes. Maybe your themes is classroom, internship, extracurriculars. That's thematic, right? Maybe your theme is you were interested in molecular and the environmental aspects of that. Maybe there's, themes according to that. So just to give you a few examples. Okay, once you've decided on a direction, stitch it together, keeping your transition words, phrases, and clauses in mind. We didn't mention that yet, and I meant to get a resource on transition words, clauses, and phrases, but I haven't done that yet. But, subsequently, accordingly, after that, I did this, right? So these transition words. Revise, revise, revise. We always recommend that you write more. Write a 700-word essay. Cutting down your essay is actually easy, especially if you give yourself a little time. So, write it, get it all out, give yourself a day or 2 days, whatever. And then go back to it fresh. I like to so when we're cutting things down to word count, so if it's from 700 to 350 or 600 to 500, I call it liposuction, if that helps give an image at all. you're just sucking stuff out. And it could be sort of like a little game. You can use contractions in your essay, so that helps with word count. So write more, and then the revision comes through working through making the larger draft smaller. And okay, there are some writers who hate drafting and love revising. And there are some writers who love revising. Wait, what did I say? Hate drafting, love revising, love drafting, hate revising. One thing is, even though you're a teen, you might want to try and figure out which kind of writer you are and figure out which is a harder part for you. And then you get your butt in the chair and you chain your muse to the desk and all that stuff. But again, write more and you cut it down. And you might find that the cutting down part is fun. I find it to be fun. And when we do it in partnership with students in conversation, I think we all enjoy it. All right. So we got that. We got our tips. I think it's time for a couple of examples. So I'm going to get the prompt up. What you got, Helen?
Well, let's start with what I would call sort of the traditional UC6. The student who is writing the UC6 to demonstrate their interest in their major. So we had one student who applied to the UCs as an English major, but she was also very, very interested in creative writing, which sort of goes along with that. But she wrote about everything she'd done to pursue her love of literature and her creative writing. So she talked about some of the favorite books that she had read in her English classes in school, like The Great Gatsby or Edith Wharton's The Age of Innocence. She also mentioned what she did out of class, including a creative writer summer program at Kenyon College, which is quite a selective and great program to have on your resume if you're a creative writer, like 96 other high school creative writers. She also worked as a correspondent, sort of journalist intern for the New York Times International Edition. So she had a lot of writing experience out of the classroom, but she also talked about her in-class experience. And her love of literature and creative writing really came through in her essays. She also was accepted to Stanford as an English major, as well as doing quite well on her UC applications. So that's kind of the more typical UC6 to talk about everything that you want to in the major that you're telling schools you're applying for.
Right, and then I can't remember what you did with the creativity one, but the creativity piece also just really complemented what she was doing in the essay about her love of literature. Well, I've got a STEM example that's maybe a little less traditional in the sense that his profile was a little less traditional. So this was a student who did not start out being super focused on computer science when we first started working with him in his junior year. So we met him quite late in high school, and he was sort of all over the place. It was like law, medicine, business, engineering. And in his second semester junior year, he got really into coding and he gained a focus. He was also a very, very competitive student. And we said to him, well, if you really want to go for something like Berkeley Engineering, you have to do something with your coding now, over the summer. You have to really just intensify what you're doing to give yourself any chance. Because usually, you know, students who are competitive for Berkeley EECS they've been coding since this point. They're in middle school, they've done a lot of hackathons, they know a bunch of different languages, they've created a lot of things, they might have even a portfolio of their work and things like that. So we were nervous about him. So I suggested that he create an app. This was about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, which he did, which connected teens who could help out with household chores to people who needed help with household chores in his neighborhood. And this app was actually written up by the San Jose Mercury News. It was a major accomplishment for him. It was a major growth experience for him. He also, that summer, he took multiple independent courses in computer science. He learned different languages. He went to hackathons. So basically, we had him take, you see, the personal insight question number 6, and like gather everything that he had done since he had decided computer science is for me, put it all in there. And this student was accepted to Berkeley Engineering. And then what we did was we took the app project and we had him write about that in personal insight question number 2, dealing with creativity. So he talked about the creativity he used in creating, in just literally thinking about the app, creating it, the different iterations, its functionality, its design. And so we took a little piece from number 6 on his academic interest and sort of opened up the aperture, like really blew it up. And that was his opportunity in number 2. So you see how you can then use these essays to focus, define, and then complement and enhance. And it worked out really well.
It also shows you how much you can do in your junior year summer. He did a lot, yeah. So, okay, so we have another student, student C, who's an example that we talked about before that we would give you of a student who applied to very different majors at different UC campuses. She wanted to apply to some UC campuses as a business major, and she wanted to apply to other UC campuses as a cognitive science major. That sounds pretty different. So because she wanted to apply to the undergraduate business major at Berkeley, that put her in the category of somebody who had to talk about everything she had ever done in the world of business. She hadn't done that much. She did a business internship at a biotech company. I think it was the summer between sophomore and junior years. So we used the UC4 to talk about that, the significant educational opportunity. That really highlighted that experience. She actually had rotated through a bunch of functional areas in that internship. So she did business development and marketing and operations. It was all within one internship though. So if we had used the UC6 for that, it would have only been talking about one experience. So we used the UC4 for that. And in the UC6, she talked about all of the experiences she had that developed into an interest in cognitive science. She had taken a couple of Johns Hopkins gifted and talented CTY programs, one of which was in cognitive science, one of which was in neuroscience. She had done some reading on her own. I think she took a psychology course at school. So we put all that on the UC6. That way, no matter what campus she applied to, they would see that she was interested in the major that she had designated for that application. And she did pretty well because she ended up, aside from doing well with the UCs, getting accepted to the UC Marshall School of Business as an undergraduate. And she also got accepted to UPenn to study cognitive science. And once she got there, she found that she actually ended up taking a class with one of the professors that she had written about in her UC Penn application, who actually combined studying cognitive science and business. So that just sort of worked out quite well for her at UPenn. She wrote me an email afterwards and said, guess who I'm taking a class with? So that was kind of exciting.
And that just goes to show too that you don't have to focus on one thing to be successful in admissions. And the other piece that I think this example highlights is that the academic interest that inspires, it doesn't have to be high school. It doesn't have to be a high school subject. So cognitive science is something she learned on her own. So it could be neuroscience. It could be, I don't know, neuromarketing. That's a neuroeconomics. That's a new one. You know, you could have an interest that's a more specialized and then take some of your classwork from high school that contributed to that, your summer school work, your independent, maybe you've done some Reddit or Quora research. You can put that into your essay as well. So it doesn't have to be an academic high school subject as well. I think that's an important point. Okay, well, our last example involves a student who is an artist, was an art applicant. And in his essays, it was so clear that he was an active and accomplished artist in 3 of his essays. So what he did was he used the academic interest essay to talk about his love of math, because he was also combining like design and tech as well as fine art in his work. but he was very much positioning himself as a forward-thinking innovator who is an artist, but extremely inspired by math. So he wrote his UC question number 6 on math. He talked about how fractals have influenced his creations and his sense of design. He wrote about using mathematical rules in his modeling, how trigonometry helped him build a model of a solar system. He talked about how all of his math and programming, learning and education helped him build a video game. He quoted Pythagoras. He mentioned Gaudi's architecture, Dali's paintings. I mean, it was really just a very beautiful ode to math by an artist. And so this essay really, what it did is it deepened his identity as an artist. By showing, his love of math and the way in which he's just an interdisciplinary mind, almost like we might call like a Renaissance man sort of thing. So this essay can really provide an opportunity to open up your profile in a totally new way that would seem real, just like the computer science major who's a film buff, and in a new, surprising way. And that's exciting for a reader. All right. I think we've covered a bunch of good examples, given people different ideas. So why don't we just match examples with our tips? So just to gather everything together, you can see we've got a bunch of our tips on how to write this essay. And here we have student A wrote a straightforward essay demonstrating her interest in a major, literature. Student B addressed the UC Berkeley's engineering school requirements. Student C combined question 6 with another essay to demonstrate her interest in multiple majors, business and cognitive science. And student D wrote about an academic subject not in his field of major interest. So hopefully that will give you guys a lot of ideas, things to go on. I'll try to get a transition Word doc in there for you before I send out my next email, but I just am linking you to just a couple of articles on the affirmative action piece. And then this is here, you see the personal insight specifications for professional colleges, in case you're wondering where to find that and where to find all that language. So, okay, I think it's time for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing and see what's happening in Q&A land and get us into gallery views. So I don't know if you have any concluding thoughts or anything, Helen, any other ways to talk about this essay as an opportunity?
I think the other thing that's good about this essay is that it becomes a real springboard for a student to write about the other essays they're going to write about that are not necessarily the UC essays. It really allows them to pull everything together. And when they have the question that we refer to as a why question for other colleges, which is usually some variant on what do you want to do and why do you want to do it here? Yeah. This gives them a good chunk of the material that they need to explain to another college what they want to do. I also find that it allows them, oh, that's right, I forgot about the time that I did. It kicks their memory up. So they sometimes forget some of the stuff that they've done by the time they're a senior that they might have done as a freshman. Like, oh yeah, I did do that summer camp. And that can really help enhance their profile and strengthen it.
Well, I also want to say, because we do want to say, you don't want this essay to sound like a list. It has to sound like an essay. However, list making is a great brainstorming activity. Just doing a list, it's very, it's a low stakes writing, and just until you can't, like you inhale and you exhale until you just can't get out another breath, get that list out. And it's just, and I know students, it's very hard for students. It's hard for all of us to like look at our lives and be like, you feel like you automatically think you haven't done enough. That's the thing that stops people, I think, from doing this question. But if you just get out the list, say, all right, put the timer on, seriously, 20 minutes. Start with 20 minutes. When you get to 20 minutes, I bet you're going to want to do another 10.
The other thing that I find is that sometimes students, when they do sort of equivalent of a resume, will say, I was a member of the math club, and then they'll kind of explain in generalizations what the math club did. And if you drill down with them on what they actually did, oh, I built the website. Oh, you built the website for the math club? That's computer science. You didn't just do math for the math club. Who else did you build websites for? And suddenly they find that they've done a lot of other things that they sort of didn't even see themselves.
Or website is collaboration too. So who else did you collaborate with, right? So the other thing, so we have veered off just a little outside of UC territory, which is totally fine. But again, if this hasn't become clear to the audience, that we tend at Blue Stars to work in very systematic ways. And basically when a student is applying to schools like UC plus however other number of schools they're applying to, that's one large project. So if we have a student writing about their academic interest for personal insight question 6, and then they want to apply, for example, to University of Michigan, which so far, I believe that, I don't know if they're going to change they haven't changed their supplement in years. And the UC Michigan, so in UC land, but the University of Michigan supplement is one question, is a 650 word why question. We say, why do you want to go here? What resources will you take advantage of? So if you've got the everything I've done, if you've written on your major, if you've written on the thing you really, really, really want to do, that can translate into part of your University of Michigan supplement, because then you will have done your research on all the stuff that's cool to you based on your profile at University of Michigan. And then you take the UC6 and then you weave it together. Right? So that's just a project management tip for you. That's a solid gold tip right there too, right? So do that question 6, and then you can translate that into your why essays, combining that with your why essay research for each school. So that's a cool tip. I like that. We moved into that territory. So
I also just thought of sort of the self-diagnosis kind of exercise that this is, because sometimes students and parents don't really realize that they do have to indicate majors on their application. It doesn't mean, for example, for the Common App, that whatever major you apply to, you have to do 2 years later. That's another entire complex subject. But if a student thinks they want to major in something, and then you ask them, okay, list everything you've done to demonstrate that, and they don't have anything, that elicits an entire other conversation. Well, maybe you want to apply with a different major where you have a stronger case to make based on the things you've done in the past. So in your head, you might think you want to be a major in X field, but the admissions committee is going to look at that designation of whatever you've checked off, compare it to what you've done. And if they don't see any demonstrated interest in that, it's going to seem a little odd to them that you decided to apply for that major.
Yeah, and this brings up also the issue, often we get the question, well, can my child go undecided? Can my child? And then is it a good idea? And, we've been doing, I know I do boast of our 10 years at this point, and it is a little landing spot, but our advice is with undecided, no, don't do that, because you don't have to, you're wasting an opportunity to define yourself more, and it's your definition that helps you with admission. So that might seem contradictory, because I also say you don't need to know what your career is to apply to college and to get into a good college. You really have to talk about what you're interested in and how you activated those interests. And then the other piece, the way we talk about it with our students, is you need to be able to present a future you. So you can talk about yourself as a medical professional. Maybe you don't know if you want to be a doctor or a researcher or a public health professional. Maybe you don't know that, but you can write that UC6 in bio and everything you've done connected to bio, and you can write, your community essay on your work with Alzheimer's and patients, and maybe you'll be a researcher, maybe you'll be a public advocate, maybe you'll be a medical doctor. That's okay. right? But you want to choose some majors. You can always change,
Mhm.
always change. So the idea with your applications is, we don't always like to use this word with admissions, but it is true. It is a marketing exercise. You are presenting a picture of your best guess, your best speculation of the kind of adult you think you're going to be. And if you get to Berkeley Eeks and you decide, I love literature. If you want to do it the other way around, way more complicated, much more complicated. So if you're really that much on the fence too, we also start to suggest liberal arts colleges. We have that much more leeway, things like that. But ultimately, the message we want to get across is you need to present definition. The definition should be based on your best guess. So also we have students sometimes write a TED Talk. How do you see yourself 20 years from now? Write your TED Talk and that, or who are your role models? We'll have students talk about role models and things like that, but pick a major.
Yeah, the other thing about the undecided thing I know is that sometimes parents and students think that will give them a leg up because it won't put them in a competitive applicant pool that might arise around a particular major. But just so everyone knows, like for Berkeley Engineering in particular, they actually say on their website, if you apply as an undecided engineering major, it will make it more difficult for you to get into Berkeley Engineering as an undergraduate. So not a great strategy. If you think it's going to make it easier for you, it actually makes it harder, at least there for sure. Yeah. And they tell you that. So
I'll just leave with a sort of lofty philosophical sort of analysis of this, but there's in sort of the existentialist tradition, there has been a lot of thought about, this idea of choosing not to choose. That's the person who acts. I don't want to give it too much language, but this idea of choosing not to choose. But I feel like you come off as you're choosing not to choose when you do that. And I think these days, admissions readers, they want to see students who making a choice for something is its own personal growth exercise. Again, you can change your mind. That's the other thing that even when we do school lists with students and we get, we start to derive their list out of the work that they're doing, we're like, which do you like better, this school or that school? I don't know. Pick one now. Okay. 2 weeks later, you can change your mind. Similarly, once you get to college, and college is its own journey, you can change then. But work on definition as an undergraduate college applicant. So I don't think we have any questions. I feel like, wow, we must have been like really, it was a straightforward day. I wore my straightforward shirt, just straightforward day. Well, everybody's hanging on, so hopefully it's been helpful. And great. I think we're good. I think we've exhausted what we can do at the moment. This will be recorded, so if people want to look at it again, no problem. Thanks for coming back after my little glitch, but now my new rig is golden, so I'm really excited about that. Thanks, Helen. It's good to see you.
too.
All right, everybody, have a good 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So I'll be back on the 18th with Personal Insight Question 7. So take care. Have a great holiday. Bye.